What is up, guys? Universal Gamer Reviews here with a brand new video, and welcome to Indie Soul. This is a series that I'm trying to get off the ground where I attempt to interview brand new developers with upcoming games or who have been in the indie gaming scene for a little bit and take a look at some of their latest projects or ask them some personal questions and just really dig deep into the mind of indie developers and see what makes them want to do what they do. And of course, we're going to be talking about their upcoming and latest games and future releases. And for our inaugural episode, we're going to be having an interview with Talin Marcu, who is the founder of Talin Games. He has one game under his belt and has published another. The game in question is The Adventures of Elena Temple, a game that I have personally reviewed on my channel, so you can check that out. I'll get right to the point. It is a game worth checking out, and it was a lot of fun to play. This interview was written and recorded very early on after the game was released. I'd say about a week or two after the game had come out. I'd written the question, sent it to him, and he brought it back. I do apologize for how long it took to get this interview out. No real excuse, just been busy as all hell, I guess. So without further ado, guys, let's get this interview going. And I hope you all enjoy what he had to say about his game in the indie game market. First off, Mr. Marcu, I want to thank you so much for agreeing to do this interview with me. It's more than an honor. So let's get right to the questions. So previously, you worked in mobility games. What made you want to go indie?
I entertained the idea of going indie in my head for a while, but I still had things I wanted to do at mobility games first. It may sound funny, but I kind of also wanted to celebrate my 10 years anniversary in the industry before going indie. And then things at mobility started to not look so great, so I thought there was no better time to give this indie life a try. I had some savings, and I figured I could make 2, maybe 3 unsuccessful games before I had to move back to work in a company. And if one would sell well enough to fund another, then I'd keep at it for as long as I could.
Alright, and where did you get the idea for the game?
I always loved the games of old, those 80s games I used to play as a kid. I missed that purity of game design from back then when ingenuity was the key, not flashy graphics. And I wish I had been a part of that early age of the industry, so I thought, why not make one of those games now? Maybe there will be other like-minded players out there who'd enjoy this kind of game. I also wanted a female lead named after my wife, Elena, and the puzzle platformer seemed like something both fun to make and fun to play, and in the end I think indie games should be mostly about what we love so that our passion transgresses into our games.
Was Elena Temple your first idea for a premium title, or did you have a few other titles in mind?
I had several ideas in my head, but Elena Temple seemed the most feasible one for my first indie project. It's a rather small and quirky game that had I not made this one first, I don't know if I'd have the guts to follow up on a more complex game with this one. It seemed like a very fitting start to my indie label, so to speak. Something small that looks like it's been summoned from the depths of time, so that when the second game will have colors instead of being monochrome, people will go, yeah, I can definitely see the evolution in Talin's games.
How long did it take you to make the game?
I spent 6 months for the Steam version, then a couple of weeks to port it on Nintendo Switch. But since March, when the game launched on Steam, and up until now, it's been my only focus, talking about it, promoting it as best as I can, working on the website and all kinds of stuff like that. I'm also working on an update now, first to add some of the functionality and tweaks from the Switch to the Steam version, and then to also add some new stuff in there that I'm going to announce what it's all about pretty soon.
What made you want to develop games?
I think it was a combination of Supaplex and Heroes of Might and Magic 3. I loved playing games as a kid, but the tech seemed so alien to me at first. But when I played Superplex, this puzzle game from back in the day, I liked it so much that I began to design levels for it on paper for no other purpose than to play around with ideas and mechanics from the game. And I think that's when the idea was first planted in my mind, the idea that I'd make games of my own. And then with Heroes 3, I was so entranced by its magical world, and this desire grew in me, not necessarily to make something similar, but because that seemed impossible, but to be around the people who knew how to make a game like that so that I can learn too. That was the catalyst for me to actually pursue a path to get in the industry. So I started learning about computers and programming and all that.
What was one of the biggest complications making a game? Was it a deadline, a mechanic, art, animation? What was it?
The biggest complication was that I was making everything myself, except for the music where I had to get the external help. I wanted to do it myself, but it was just too much. I spent a lot of time on the level design. First of all, because I love that part, and secondly, because I wanted each level to be somewhat unique, both in looks, in how you move through it, the kind of puzzles it incorporates, and so on. I also wanted the difficulty to be somewhat difficult for players that aren't experts at platformers and somewhat easy for people that are, so that everyone can have fun with it. And I think I nailed that aspect. A part of the players said it was challenging and difficult in a good way, and the other part said it was a bit easy, but it still kept them hooked. So nobody said it was frustratingly difficult or boringly easy.
How challenging was it to make some of the rooms as challenging as they were with such simple mechanics and a few assets?
Like I said, it was where I spent the most time tweaking levels to try to nail this desired level of difficulty and working with few things, but trying to combine them in unique ways is where I have the most fun when creating games. I think that's where the magic is, when a player learns nearly everything about a game in the first few minutes and then still gets surprised all the way through its end.
What games or movies inspired you to make Elena Temple as a character?
One of the main inspirations was Pitfall. I loved playing that game when I was a kid. That's why the game has an Indiana Jones like character. And for the visuals, Prince of Persia and Dark Castle from the original Macintosh were the main references. Although my sprites are simpler because of the much lower resolution, I only use 240 by 160 pixels. And the gameplay was the result of a lot of platformers mashed up inside my head, played through the decades.
Was it hard for you to recapture the feel and style of games so old?
Not that much, no. I had to make sure that what I had in my head, how I remembered various visual styles, were at least close to the real thing. But other than that, it was just fun trying to come up with something that looks close enough, but also doesn't mean implementing some hugely complex shaders. I use quite simple techniques, but they are very effective, like scan lines and static noise, interlace effects, duplicating and offsetting the screen buffer, and so on. The important thing to me is what works, not how complex it is to make it.
With such a cool feature of being able to switch the game's art style, why can't we do it at the touch of a button?
Interesting question. There are some technical and usability things to consider, but I guess the simple answer is that I just didn't think about implementing it that way.
While the various art styles are a cute little touch with the funny descriptions at the bottom, it almost feels like a time capsule to a more simple generation of gaming. Was that your intention, or was that just from pure nostalgia?
Yeah, like I said before, I love how back in the day, game developers were able to make so much out of the simplest things. So it was definitely my intention to recreate that feeling of going back to a time where mechanics were few but yet fun and challenging.
A lot of critics are saying that your game is simplicity done right. Now, was that intentional, or was that done through a series of compromises to make the game more simple to get it out on a certain deadline?
The intention was always to create a platformer with a few classic mechanics, hopefully really well done, and to let the level design do the magic. This wasn't a game where I had a ton of complex layers I had to get rid of because of a limited budget. No, I pretty much implemented everything I set out to. Like I said, it's my love letter to a simpler time. Some people will like it, some will not, but I'm still very proud and happy with the result.
Now, where did you get those interesting background house pics? I gotta know.
Well, that's a stock secret that I'll take with me to the grave.
Do you plan to make more games starring Elena Temple with more modern gameplay and art styles, or is this just a one and done character for you?
Because of the meta story in this game about the failed developer who just couldn't catch a break, it doesn't really make sense to feature this character in another game, but who knows, maybe I'll get an idea someday and it will work out. But for my next game, I'm focusing on something else entirely.
Now, out of all the platforms you could have released for, why did you pick PC, Mac, and Nintendo Switch?
I've made mainly mobile games during the first 10 years of my career, so I really needed a break from that. I spent a lot of time wanting to join the many developers who published their games on Steam. So it was a certainty that my first indie game will be on Steam, no matter how cluttered it got lately. Having used Unity, it was easy to make the game both PC and Mac compatible, and I also had a way to test it on both platforms. As for the Switch, again, I dreamed of releasing a console game at some point in my career, and the Switch was the latest console I bought, and I fell in love with it. Not to mention that the game feels like such a good fit on this console, and it's Nintendo. It's the home of some of the best platformers ever, so I just had to release Elena Temple here. As for other consoles, even if I'm a huge PlayStation fan, I don't know. My game seems like it would get lost really quick with all those AAA games in there. So I don't want to take the chance and make that investment, but who knows? Maybe sometimes in the future.
Would you be interested to port to Xbox, PS4, or even mobile in the future?
Well, here I go again answering questions before they're even asked. To reiterate, very slim chance for mobile, maybe on PS4 and Xbox sometime in the future, but only if I make another game first that makes sense on those platforms.
Now, I am curious about what engine you use for Elena Temple because a lot of independent developers use Unity, Fusion, and GameMaker Studio 2 for their games.
Yeah, I used the Unity too. It was almost an obvious choice for me, really, because first of all, their support for a Nintendo Switch, and yeah, it was a great choice because the porting process was very fast and smooth, and I also worked on Unity for around 5 years prior to going indie, so again, I had a lot of experience with it.
Now, why did you pick that engine?
Okay, I really can't stop answering questions too early. So yeah, portability to a very large array of platforms, and I had a lot of experience with Unity already.
Now, with the way the map flows, it has kind of a Metroidvania feel to it. How did you decide on that form of exploration?
One of the pillars I set out for the game in pre-production was that I didn't want a linear game. I wanted to let the player explore, to feel that he found something cool because he made the choice to follow that path, not because I set that room as level 13 and he was bound to get there no matter what. That's also why I have secret rooms in the game, because I want to create that feeling of, whoa, look what I found. Also, in a linear game, you get stuck, and that's it. Better start googling for a solution. But I wanted to avoid that. I wanted the player to have the option to just go to another place on the map and play that part if you get stuck somewhere.
Platformers nowadays are a dime a dozen. Same for retro throwbacks, especially with indie devs. So, what are you offering us that we can't get anywhere else?
Ooh, time for the marketing pitch here. I think what I'm offering is a game that isn't afraid to truly go back to the roots of gaming. A lot of games call themselves retro just because they have pixel art. I wanted to create the feel of actually playing a game from a long time ago with some nice bonuses from today's gaming landscape like autosaving and dynamic checkpoints.
Now, in the description of the game, you ask, ever miss being a child playing games in your grandma's or your old bedroom? Is that how you first played games?
No, I guess the part with the grandmas is part of this image I have about how kids back then would spend the summer with their Game Boy at their grandparents. I first played games on a Spectrum clone in my bedroom, so that part is inspired by my childhood. I wasn't as lucky to own a portable console back then, but boy did I made up for that when I grew up.
What are some of your oldest gaming memories?
That Spectrum clone on which you had to load games using cassettes through a cassette player, they had this specific sound they made while loading, and at some point the splash of the game would load and there would be these colored horizontal lines moving around the sides. It was pretty mesmerizing. And on that old thing I played Pitfall, or who knows, maybe it was a Pitfall knockoff. I don't know, in my mind it was Pitfall. I distinctly remember swinging over crocodiles.
Now, I understand you have a wife and kids. Was it scary for you going indie, thinking about supporting them?
Yeah, definitely, but I tend to be careful about my family's financial safety. That's why I waited for 10 years before making the leap. I wanted to make sure I had enough savings to be able to survive a few failures, not to mention that I'm very aware that I might have to get a corporate job again, because chances for indies to actually make it nowadays are very, very slim.
Was there ever a moment developing this game when you thought, I cannot do this? And if so, what pushed you to keep going on?
It helps a lot to make a game out of pure passion. I knew from the start that this had little to no chance to be a financial success, so I made it because I wanted to make it, because nobody in their right mind would probably make something like this. So I said, heck, I'll go crazy with it. If it works, wonderful. If not, it won't be any surprise. So development was great, one of the best times in my life, really. The worst moment for me was when the game released on Steam and it did quite poorly. Even if I expected it and I read all the stories that Steam is not what it used to be, I still hoped that it would sell enough to justify at least a bit of the time I spent on making this game. And I had a lot of positive feedback from the people that tried it, but that also doesn't matter anymore. The visibility just isn't there. It's as simple as that. You need something that truly stands out in a huge crowd, or you need a big marketing budget, and I didn't have any of that. I had a quirky little game which appealed to a very niche audience, and thank God things are much better now on Switch, and I'm very happy with my choice to release Elena Temple on this console.
Can you give any advice to developers in training or anybody who thinks they want to make a game?
To indies or aspiring indies, I'd say don't go in this unless you have a backup plan. Things are most likely to not go the way you expect them to. Have a backup, either savings, investors, a part-time or a full-time job, anything that will help you keep going when your game will most likely fail. Nobody wants to hear that, but if you look at the statistics, is the sad truth. Also, don't put all your money on just one platform. Don't limit yourself. For those who want to start making games, I guess learn and create as much as you can on your own. But as soon as you get the chance, I advise getting a job in the industry first. The experience you'll get from the inside is invaluable. You'll have plenty of time to do it on your own after you have a solid foundation and some money put aside for rainy days.
Okay. Well, how do you feel about the modern game space, and what do you think Elena Temple will bring to it?
I think Elena Temple brings almost nothing to the modern game space aside from a reminder of how games used to be and how we can enjoy simpler things and still have a lot of fun. The modern game space is first and foremost overcrowded on all layers, from AAA to indies. How we manage to navigate it is up to anyone's guess, but it's a fact we need to be very aware of.
So, Elena Temple is out. Now, what is next for you? Are you going to keep improving the game, or do you have another game in store for us?
I'm working on an update for the game, then I'm taking a short break as my second son comes to the world. Yeah, so after things settle down a bit, I'll start working on a new game which will not be monochrome and it will not be a platformer.
Okay, now, last question, and I always like to end these on a serious one, as you guys will find out very soon. Game of the Year 2018?
Ooh, I think it's a very tight race between the adventures of Elena Temple and God of War, but you know what? I'll concede. I think God of War should win. I'll let it go because, it just has much more colors than my game.
Well, I'd have to agree with you there, and so did the Game Awards, since God of War did win Game of the Year 2018. But who knows? Maybe your next game will bring it home. Well, sir, that is it. I want to thank you so much for agreeing to do this interview, and I do apologize for how long it took to get this out to you and to all of you. I hope you guys did enjoy this interview. This was Catilin Marcu giving us an exclusive interview on his game, and I had such a good time doing it. I know he did too, and I hope you guys look forward to this. If you think there's any developers out there who would like an interview or who would love to share their thoughts on the industry, then please contact me immediately and we'll see what we can do. I always like to play the games before I do any form of interview or review, so please let me know about the game before you let me know about the developer so I can decide whether or not I actually want to do it. And if there are any developers who saw this and do want to do something, please feel free to contact me. And as always, if you want to see more videos like this or reviews or streams in the future, make sure to subscribe to my channel. You can check out my Twitter and my Twitch channel in the description below. I also have a Discord that I'll leave a link to in the description below. Make sure to hit that little bell icon and like the video if you did enjoy it. If you didn't like it, also hit that dislike button. They both help. And as always, this is the Universal Gamer Reviews. This is UGR signing out, and I'll see you guys next time on Indie Soul.